Enjoy the ride with Crystal Petry. Consulting, so inspiring. Wishing you to.
Hello, and thank you again for joining me on another episode of 60 Minutes With. I am your host, and joining me on the podcast is Sean Villery-Samuel. He is a lawyer, and he's going to talk to us about what it takes to become a lawyer, what it takes to stay being a lawyer, and also answer some legalese terms for us as well. So thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. Humbled to be here. Thank you for asking me to join.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you and I have a mutual friend, Chief Deputy Dante Miller of Jefferson County, Texas Sheriff's Department. Now, when I asked him who did he think would make a great guest on my show, he stated you. Now, the reasons that he stated you were in this order. He said he's a great husband. He loves this community. Oh, and by the way, he's a lawyer. So we'll talk about all of those things in that order.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, Dante said he felt like men did not compliment other men enough on being a great husband. Is that something you feel as well?
Well, I feel like I'm in that in-between generation of where some of the gentlemen before us may not have been as comfortable having those type of conversations, but the younger generation, they're more open and willing to speak about how they feel. So I have come on the coattail of those that are uncomfortable, but I found a space where I think it's okay to talk about it. And the guys that I've grown up with, the people that I consider friends and family, we talk about those things because it's important.
It absolutely is. Now, what do you think is the definition, or what is your definition of a good husband?
Well, first, he's very kind for saying that. I appreciate that. But I think somebody that is compassionate, I think that's a very important thing. Selfless, thoughtful. One of the things that I talk about at times are something I call the 3 C's. And generally whenever I'm asked to speak at a wedding, these is one of the things that I try to pass on to others because it's helped me. And the 3 C's is consistency, compassion, and communication. Consistency in the sense that what it took for you to get with this person, what you've done throughout the years, continue to do those throughout the years. That is what's going to help you continue to have that bond and grow that bond. Compassion. We all have different lives, busy lives, and oftentimes we can get caught up in our own world. But having the thought of taking a step back and recognizing that the other person I'm in this relationship with have their own things going on, and simply understanding that it will make your life a lot easier. And the last thing is communication. I think we've all understood how important that is, especially in a post-pandemic world where we were fractured and weren't able to communicate as we did want to. So I think those are some of the things that will help you to do that.
I was speaking with someone recently, I would say probably around our age, and it was a female, and she said that people don't get married for love anymore. They get married for convenience, or they get married for business. What do you say to that?
Well, I am a lover by nature, so obviously I'll push back to that, but I do realize love looks different for different people. There's different things that different people need. What it may have been for me to be attracted to my wife, to want to build a life with her, may be different for somebody else. So I can't necessarily knock somebody that goes into it for a more strategic reason. But I do believe, and I am hopeful that people still do marry for love. I think that is a great reason, but obviously it can't be the only reason, because just because you love someone doesn't mean you necessarily should be with them. Sometimes I believe people are better apart. They can be a better version of themselves.
You probably should be a marriage counselor too. That was wonderful. Dante Miller also said that you are a lover of this community, Beaumont, Texas. What is your desire and belief for Beaumont, Texas?
I want Beaumont to thrive. And I say thrive specifically because I think when you're thriving, you're not just doing okay. You're not just doing well. You're not just putting for par. Thriving means you're doing abundantly well. And that's what I want for this city. It's given so much to me. It's my roots. It's what made me who I am. And it gave me the skill set and the belief in myself that regardless of where I may have been in this country, I knew I could compete and do well. And then coming back home, this city has been very generous to me, provided me a life where I can take care of my loved ones, and has allowed me to find those different places where I can step in and be of service. So I love Beaumont. I promote Beaumont. My wife will tell you I'm very proud of Beaumont. But at the same time, I recognize there is space for us to grow and to continue to develop.
You are a huge proponent of voting.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that so important to you?
Because many of the complaints that we might have, if you start kind of going back down that rabbit hole, it leads to that particular point. Often those decision makers are the people that have been put into those positions by being elected. Being around politics for as long as I can remember due to my father, that was something that was always present in my life. And then when I went to school in Florida, again, because of the world I was in, I was introduced to politics once again. And now, because of the career I have, politics is an ever present factor. So, I mean, voting, if you have concerns about the people that are making those ultimate decisions about what happens in your life, whether it be in the family court, whether it be at the county level, or at the city level, all of that goes back to voting. And if we don't participate, we don't have the ability to direct and guide the direction of our community.
So voting impacts what happens in the courthouse as well?
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. So, I'm not saying this in Jefferson County, but I've been to many different counties to practice law, from criminal court to civil court. And while I would like to say that we have nothing but great judges, the fact of the matter are these are still people, just like me as a lawyer. I'm a person. So it's kind of difficult for me. I try to stay away from talking in stereotypes and in general type of matters. So, you know, there are times where judges might not be as perceptive to the perspective that I might have or that my client might have. And that's why it's so important making sure that your judicial bench, for example, is well-rounded in being that it is reflective of your community. If you come from a community where it's the county is over 30% minority in one particular demographic, for example, African American, but you have a judicial bench where there's only one African American judge, and now we're talking about Jefferson County. The question we have to ask ourselves is that reflective of our community? And if not, then why? Obviously, I don't believe it's because we don't have qualified people, but now we're talking about voter participation and things of that sort.
When you speak about voting, you
Yes, ma'am.
speak about one reaches seven a lot. What does that mean, and what is the intention behind that?
Great question. I can't take the credit for that. That is all James Payne brainchild.
Okay.
But the theory, the concept is very simple. Each election cycle, I'm responsible for 7 people, making sure that these 7 people vote. You know, and we do that through text messages. And then once you have proof of maybe them taking a voting, for example, a sticker or something of that sort, but some sort of proof that they voted, you can do a collage, put that on social media saying, hey, my 7 have voted. Now, some could say, well, I've done my job. Well, one, you don't have to have just one group of 7. You can have multiple. But those 7 individuals that you have as your 7, they are responsible for 7 other people.
Okay.
So it's a pyramid of sorts. If we continue to have that trickle down, from a simple text message of holding 7 people accountable, that can trickle down to hundreds of people participating, and it has proven to be true in the past.
Okay, well, now we're going to move over to what Dante, I guess, thought the least.
Yes, ma'am.
Is you've been a lawyer. Now, you are a criminal defense lawyer, but you work primarily with personal injury, correct?
Yes, so I started my career primarily doing a lot of criminal defense. I had a practice with my father for almost 10 years. In 2019, I joined Provost Humphrey, where I started doing primarily personal injury. So I've had extensive background in criminal law, and now I've kind of flipped that to primarily personal injury. So yes, I'm not sure if I answered the question,
Yeah.
but that's kind of how my path to where I am now has gone.
So I have two follow-up questions
Mm-hmm.
to that. My first one is, why did you switch from criminal defense to personal injury? And can you explain to me what is personal injury?
Great question. Personal injury is basically any type of matter when somebody has been injured, been hurt, received any type of damages. That can range from a car wreck to a slip and fall, to a dog bite, to a plant explosion, being injured there. And we handle all of those type of cases. So those type of cases, personal injury cases, takes me from different counties in Texas as far as Oklahoma, Georgia, Florida. We have cases all over because of these type of matters. So that's kind of what personal injury is. Basically, if you were injured at the fault of someone else, and we have the ability to hold them accountable, that's what a personal injury case is. What led me to get here? It was a couple of different reasons. One, I do realize that my abilities are not of my own. They were given to me by somebody greater than me. And I do believe that when you have gifts, you have to be responsible and prudent with them. I had gotten to a point in my career where I wanted to use my gifts in a different way. And I thought opening myself up to the personal injury side of things would be another avenue for me to continue to do my ministry. That's how I kind of see my profession. When they say attorney and counselor, I really do believe those are two different things that everybody doesn't necessarily appreciate or take advantage of that opportunity. So by going into the personal injury realm, I'm still able to help the people fight against, while criminal law fighting against big government, now I'm fighting against big corporations half the time. So I still have the ability to represent the people. And that's really what drew me here. And I see a lot of parallels in the criminal world as well as the personal injury side of things as far as the people I represent. And what I mean by that is that when somebody is charged or accused of a crime in the criminal world, it's them against the machine. And it can be a very frightful thing. And just having somebody that's going to stand with you half the time makes all the world of a difference. And I recognize that it's us, me and my client half the time, against the government that has all the resources at their disposal. Money isn't a question. They will spend it because they have it. On the personal injury side, very similar. I have a client that has come to me that has been hurt. Oftentimes we're fighting against big corporation, big insurance, and it's the little guy against someone that has all the resources at their disposal. Fortunate enough, being here at Provost Humphrey, we have resources to compete with them. So this has given me the opportunity to fight against the largest publishing company in the world.
Who is that?
Ma'am?
Who is that?
Simon & Schuster. That was a case that I had some years ago against them. This has allowed us to fight, like I said, insurance companies, allowed us to fight the hospitality industry, and the legacy of this firm is they fought big tobacco and asbestos. So understanding that that's who we are, that was a good fit for me because I recognize we are the people fighting for the people. As we've heard before, hard-working lawyers for hard-working people. I really do believe that. And that's why I really enjoy what I do now.
As a personal injury lawyer, can you give me some specifics on exactly what it is you do?
Yes. So I'll give you an example. Today, you leave here getting a car accident. Not your own fault. You're hit from behind. Somebody just not paying attention. You are hurt. You go to the doctor. They tell you you're going to do some x-rays. They're going to give you some medications. They're going to give you a prescription. They're going to tell you to follow up with your primary care physician if you're still hurting. A couple of days later, you're still hurting. You schedule that appointment, go in, say, hey, doc, I'm having issues with my neck. Maybe it's my knee, whatever your injury may be. At that point, you might make arrangements to go somewhere else for further treatment. Somewhere in that juncture, you might have the thought, you know what, I am hurting at the fault of someone else, I'm gonna call an attorney. That's where I would come in. So you would come and visit, sit down with me, and we would talk about what happened, what your injuries are, and kind of figure out what the game plan is for you. Sometimes we can do this informally, meaning resolve it with the insurance company or with the other side informally, but sometimes we actually have to file a lawsuit. And that's something that we do often. Because one thing that we have, which is our sledgehammer as a personal injury attorney, is going to the courthouse, going to trial. That's what we have. The big insurance, the defendants, they want to hold it off as long as they can. hoping that people will just say, you know, I'm tired of it, I'm ready to settle. But when they know that we file a lawsuit, or for example, me, they understand I will go to court and I will try that case. Whether it's over $500 or whether it's over $10,000, it doesn't matter. If the case needs to be tried, that is something we're willing to do. So that's kind of the process of how it would work in a car accident, but that's pretty standard for anything. And once the case is filed, we kind of go through the whole discovery process, which is asking them for information. They get to ask us for information. We'll take depositions where people will sit down. I get to ask the other side questions. They may want to do the same for my client. We'll come to a mediation potentially where we would try to see if we could resolve it with a third party. And if not, then we would have our day in court and trial. So that's the process.
Hopefully this question isn't too forward, but I know people are wanting to know, how is it that you get paid, or Provost Humphrey get paid? How does that happen, and when does that happen?
Great question. That really depends upon the type of matter you handle. For example, the criminal cases that I do take, I've dwindled my docket down, but I still do take criminal cases to a certain extent. Those are generally going to be flat fees up front. That's just the way in which you get paid on a criminal case. You really can't do it on a contingent basis, because you win, it's not like you're going to get money. So it's an upfront fee. If somebody came in for me to review a contract, which I've really gotten away from, that would be an upfront fee they would pay a retainer. The time that I put towards that, I would send them an invoice, let them know I put 5 hours in reviewing this based upon whatever my charging rate is at the time. That is how we would dictate how much we are to receive versus how much the client keeps in their particular trust fund. But when we're talking about personal injury, what we do, some attorneys, because of the size of the operation, they do require their clients to front some of the money. And for example, when it was just my dad and I, we didn't have all those resources. So if I needed to hire some experts, that would be something explained to the client. Hey, we probably need this particular expert. It's going to cost this amount of money. If you want them, I'm going to need you to go ahead and pay for that. And if they didn't, that's fine. But they were making that decision. Here it's different. We work on a contingency basis. So it costs nobody that's been injured that wants me to represent them. It costs you nothing.
Really?
Yeah. We eat what we kill. And what I mean by that, the only way we get paid is if we win something on our client's behalf.
Really?
If we're not successful for some reason, any of the money we put into it, whether it's $10 or $100,000, if we lose, we simply eat that.
Wow.
And again, that's one of the benefits of coming to a firm like Provost Humphrey that has the resources to finance those type of cases. So that's one thing I love about it here, is that I'm not told what cases I can take. If I believe somebody's been wrong and I believe in the case, I can go at it, and that's what they actually encourage me to do.
So let me get this straight for myself
Yes,
and
ma'am.
for everyone else.
Yes, ma'am.
When you take on specifically a personal injury case, the client doesn't have to pay any deposit, no down payment. If you win the case, that's when like an invoice is sent out. But if you lose the case, the client does not have to pay anything. No deposit, no 10%, nothing.
So, the way it works,
Oh my
contingency. We only get paid if you get money.
Wow.
Any expenses, we will front the costs on the back end. If we're successful, yes, obviously we want our expenses back and our attorney fees. But if we lose, you owe us nothing. And obviously, our hope is not that we lose, but we can't say we win them all. But yeah, that's the way it will cost nobody anything for them to come sit down with me, see if there's something I can help them with, and if we can, for us to sign them up, cost them nothing.
My goodness, that's amazing, especially coming from a lawyer and a law firm. That's almost unheard of, right?
Well, it depends upon the size of the practice and the resources that they do have.
Right.
And like I said, fortunately, I'm in a place where I can do that, where we can do that. There's other firms that do it as well. But again, when you start getting to more of the boutique firms, those purse strings are a little bit more tight, simply because of the overall concept. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, so you are also a criminal defense lawyer.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain to me what that is?
Yes, ma'am. Whenever somebody is accused of a crime, by law, they are entitled to have representation if it's a felony. And if it's a misdemeanor of 6 months or more, potentially in jail, you have a right by law to have an attorney. What I generally tell people, I've been asked that question of, well, why are you a criminal defense attorney, and why did you choose to do that? Well, I believe anybody accused of a crime has the right to have somebody ensure that the other side plays fair. That's what my job is. People say, how can you represent people that are bad people or that are guilty? One, I push back on bad people, and I push back on guilty, simply because more often than not, in my experience of practicing law for almost 15 years now, and a large portion of my career being criminal, most people that I represent aren't necessarily bad people. They're people that have come across circumstances, unfortunately, sometimes not of their own making, and sometimes they are, where they've just made bad decisions. But again, I can count on my hand a handful of times where I've come across those people that I really did think these might not be good people. They really might be bad people. But for the most part, I just believe these are people in circumstances. So with that understanding, that perspective, should I say, being a criminal defense attorney, for me at least, is standing in the gap to ensure that the other side plays fair. That's all I'm asking anybody to do. I want the judge to allow us to have a fair trial. I want the prosecutors to play fair. And it's my job to ensure that they do.
Why did you become a lawyer, and who did you see growing up that you were able to look at and say, you know what, that's what I know you've spoken that you had a practice with
Yes,
your
ma'am.
father, but so was it him that you were able to look to and say, that's what I want to do when I grow up?
Great question. So growing up, as a young boy, every young boy wants to be like their dad. So growing up, it was, oh yeah, I want to be a lawyer. Then when I got to the point of graduating high school, which I graduated from Clifton J. Ozan Magnet High School in 2000, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do that, and I went to Florida A&M for undergrad and grad school. I went into an MBA program for business school, and my plan was to go into corporate America. I mean, during that time, I worked for IBM, I worked for Shell Oil and Gas, Motiva, Scientific Games. I was doing everything from a financial analyst to accounting to management. So that's the world I thought I was going in. But as it goes, I got to undergrad out there and had a good time. I was there for a long time. I got there in 2000, and about 2006, my dad was like, son, you need to graduate. Now, to be fair, it wasn't that I was just messing around, but I was in and out of school because of these internships. For example, when I was with IBM, I was out of school for 8 months because I was working for them before I came back. So it really was business school. And then when it got to the point we started having those questions about graduation, it was, well, what are you gonna do? And at that point, I wasn't sure. I just knew I needed to graduate. And I thought, well, if he could go to law school, surely I can. And that's what led me to law school. But what allowed me to believe, again, that I could be a lawyer, simply seeing someone that I knew that looked like me that could be a lawyer. And fortunately, growing up, because my dad was a lawyer, he was around a lot of other lawyers that looked like me. He went to Thurgood Marshall School of Law, historically black institution. A lot of the guys that he graduated with that were actually in Beaumont were black lawyers. So I knew what black lawyers look like. That's why it's so important to me to go to schools, especially elementary schools, where they get to see somebody that looks like them. I think once you are able to see that, you can visualize it, and it becomes real as a possibility for yourself. And I just don't say that. I actually have an example of it because when I first came back to Beaumont, to Jefferson County to practice law, I was one of the mock trial teams at what was then Ozan. And it was Brittany Holmes and Ronnie Turner, two other black lawyers that looked like us. And we had some students that were involved in a lot of different things. So it was a struggle kind of getting them all together. And then
Let me interrupt you real quick. Can you explain to everyone what a mock trial is?
Great question. Mock trial, which I competed in high school, in college, and even in law school, it's just that. You have attorneys, you have witnesses, you're given a set of facts that are made up. Sometimes it's criminal, sometimes it's civil, depending on the year. And you will actually try a case against other schools and compete that way. So in high school, you compete against other high schools. When I was in college, we competed against other colleges, such as Harvard, University of Chicago, and we were winning. And that's why you can't tell me anything about the schooling and teaching I've received, because I know we can compete anywhere. So that's what mock trial is. So at the high school level, we would meet with them once or twice a week. We'd have to teach them the rules of evidence. We'd have to work with them on the different aspects of trial. And we would put together a trial. And you have to do both defense and prosecution or plaintiff. And during a competition, one round you might be plaintiff, next round you be defense, and you flip-flop depending on how well you move on. Well, one of our students at that time has gone on to be a lawyer out in, I believe, Philadelphia. And some years ago, he came back home for holidays, and he was at an event where I was speaking, and I believe he actually spoke about his experience at that point. And we were talking, and he mentioned, he said, Sean, he said, the only reason I knew I could be a lawyer is because I saw you. He said, I never saw a black lawyer before. And oftentimes we take for granted our own experiences because it's our world, and we don't recognize or appreciate the impact we can have on others. And from that particular experience, it reminded me of the power and the importance of simply being in spaces so that young people that look like us are aware that, yes, you too can go into this world and be successful and thrive.
Did you remember that student?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I've actually tried to recruit him back here because I'm gonna need some help at some point. But yes, I remember him vividly and still talk to this day.
What was your emotion? I was overtaken when he said, the only reason I'm a lawyer is because of you.
Well,
because I saw you.
Right. And I was gonna say, I'm not taking that credit because
right.
His family, he comes from a great family that has supported him, but definitely was humble. And reminded of the responsibility that I have. Historically within the black community, black doctors, black lawyers have held a very important role, as well as our churches, important role in our communities, and had often been looked to as leadership during those tough times. And it just further reminds me that we are still those people in this community. So I hold that very dearly, and I'm very proud that I carry that responsibility and privilege.
Most athletes, whenever you talk to them, they say, I pattern my game after Michael Jordan or LeBron James or Steve Kerr. Mm-hmm. Do you pattern the way you practice law after another lawyer or after someone in particular?
Good question. So two different things. I think there's one aspect of trying a case, a lawsuit, and I think there's another aspect of actually the practice of law. I'll start with the trying of the lawsuit of a case in trial. When I first started practicing, and this is the same thing that I talk to new young lawyers. I used to teach at Thurgood Marshall School of Law. I would teach the students the same thing, some of the information I passed on. What I did when I first started, because early on you have more free time because you don't have as many clients, and I was one to try to take advantage of the time that I had, because I knew at some point my docket was going to grow and I'm going to start running and you'll never stop. So during that time, I would just go sit in numerous trials and just sit and watch. And I just take notes to the extent where I'm literally writing down every question during voir dire somebody would ask. And I started saying, okay, I do like that. I don't like that as much. Let me try this. And as I'm starting to build this repertoire of information, then I start experimenting with it to see what works and start building on it. So my style of how to try a lawsuit is a conglomerate of a lot of different influences, from local to other places beyond. And I also do a lot of ancillary type of research. I do look a lot into psychology of the subconscious aspect of things, because I'm really trying to tap in on a whole nother level. So when it comes to the practice of trying a lawsuit, it's a conglomerate of everything. When it comes to the practice of law, I have the good fortune to say that I've had two role models. My first law partner, my dad. When I came into the business, he instilled in me the importance of looking like a lawyer and what that meant. He instilled to me the importance of managing the resources that you do have, because at some point in the practice, it went from my dad controlling the practice to I became the managing partner of the practice, and I managed it up until the time I left in 2019. So having that experience with a small firm has been extremely helpful in knowing how to deal with people, but also a lot of that comes from my experience in business school and understanding and learning that side of things. Coming to Provost Humphrey, I've had the good fortune of learning how to practice law from a James Payne. So not only does he give me some of the tidbits of how to try a case and some of the things that might work and what might not work, he talks to me about what it means to help or run a large practice, a large firm, how to manage a docket of over 200 cases, how to manage staff of multiple different personalities, how to manage the different personalities with lawyers. All of those different type of things have helped me in establishing my practice that I like to say is successful, and prepare me for whatever the future may look like.
You have stated that your father was a lawyer and that you were born and raised here in Beaumont, Texas. Can you tell me a little bit about your upbringing?
Yes, ma'am. I was born and raised in Beaumont, Texas, for the most part. I started my education not too far from here at St. Anthony School. Went there, I believe, from pre-K to about first grade. My mom, my brother and sister and I, we moved to Colorado for about a year. Lived out there on the outskirts in a suburb called Aurora. Moved back to Beaumont for, I guess that would have been my third grade, finished out my third grade or so, and then we moved to Houston. My mother, my brother, and my sister, and I lived out there up until my 8th grade year. My 8th grade year, that's when I decided I wanted to move on back with my dad. So I moved back to Beaumont. Went to Austin Middle School and reconnected with friends from pre-K and met new friends, and to this day we're still buddies. And from Austin went to Ozan. Well, I went to Central. I went to Central. That's where I thought I was going to graduate. Going into the 10th grade year, they were developing this concept of Ozan being a magnet high school in the performing arts. Growing up, I was a theater kid, played sports and did theater. So going into 10th grade, I actually considered going back to Houston. I applied and auditioned to get into the High School of Performing and Visual Arts. Actually got in for theater. That was the time when Robert Glasper was there, Beyonce was there. I had a cousin that was there at the time. And the thing that kept me from going is that they didn't have a basketball team. What? I was told that if I wanted to play basketball, I would have had to go. I would still go to the school, but for the basketball team, I played at a different school. Thought it was too much. And then they were talking about Ozan having all of that in one. They were bringing one of the best basketball coaches around, Coach Butte. They were pulling in all the top talent. So I decided to stay in Beaumont, and I'm better for it. I graduated in 2000. I thought I was going to go to Morehouse. Went on a visit with a couple of buddies. Really wasn't a good fit for me. I had a cousin that told me to apply to Florida A&M. I had never heard of it. I said, might as well. I spent all this money on applications. I'm going to go ahead and send off an application. I did. Got into the school, but I didn't get into the MBA program because they had a 5-year MBA program. And I believe I must not have tested as high as I needed to. And I was one of those type of students that always did well, but I wasn't one of those that just was exceptional, I imagine. So everybody else thought when it came to scholarships, oh, he's going to get it from somewhere else. And if everybody thinks he's going to get it from somewhere else, end up not getting it.
Yes.
So went to Florida A&M on a whim. Wasn't sure if I was going to go for certain because of finances until the week before. That same week before, my cousin that told me about the school, he decided he wasn't going to go. So it was me and 2 other buddies who went. And when we got there, again, like I said, I wanted to get into the MBA program. Got in, and they told me, we will put you in a probationary period. If you get a 4.0, your first semester, we'll consider it. Well, okay, that's a challenge, and I did that. First semester got the 4.0, got into the program. Second semester got a 4.0. So now I'm in the program officially. I interned with Equiva Services that summer doing accounting. Then I come back that fall, and I'm in the way the School of Business is. mind you, when I got there, the School of Business just came off of, well, the university just came off of being University of the Year. And I mean, that's against Harvard, Yale, everybody. The business school at the time was amongst the top 5 in the nation, where all CEOs were coming once a week to speak to us. And
what year was this?
That was between 2000 and 2003. Really started about 98, that strong run we had up until about 2003, 2004, as far as the business school. And they have different companies within the business school. For example, there was one company that we had where we would put on a TV show with the guests that are coming. So the CEOs that would come, we'd have a whole news segment where, I mean, it's the whole production. I was the CEO of that company, and it was like 20-something different companies within the School of Business. At some point, I continued to thrive in the School of Business, became basically the what they call the CEO of the round table, which is all of the CEOs of these different companies. I'm basically the SGA president of that.
Wow.
So had a lot of success within the business school. And like I said, about 2006, after enjoying fraternity life and just college life so well, I decided to come on back. I thought I was going to go to Howard, actually. That's the school I always intended to go. I got a call from a cousin, Michael Sterling, who was at Thurgood at that time. He was going into his 3rd year, and he told me come on back home. I had another friend from high school that I grew up knowing. She was there at the time, but when my cousin told me come on back home, that's what I did. My dad had graduated from there. He was there. So I applied to one law school, and I went. I don't think that's the route everybody should do, but it has worked out well for me. I was once told sometimes you got to bet on yourself, and that's what I've done throughout this journey.
Your life has been so interesting.
Thank you.
It's been like,
yeah.
I love it. And you know, the crazy thing is to look at you
Yes,
and
ma'am.
to listen to you speak, I would never have thought.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
You know, it looks like your life has just been a straight line from here, here, and here.
No, I've had a lot of curves, ups and downs, like many of us. But I do believe my experience has given me perspectives that everybody might not. I have the ability to connect and communicate with people in ways that everybody might not be able to. And that's one of the most important things, especially, again, when I used to teach at the law school, I would teach the students, the future lawyers that's going to go into these communities and change the world, is that one of the biggest things you can do for yourself and for your client is to develop as many perspectives as you can. Because the way in which we see the world, that's not the way everybody else does. But simply understanding why somebody else may have a different perspective will allow you to better understand.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, you've spoken about perspective.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me what are some top characteristics that you think a lawyer must have?
Good question. Definitely being selfless. This is a very demanding job. You can do very well for yourself. I would advise not to go into it simply because of the monetary gain you may receive, because, you know, one, we've all heard, all money ain't good money. And, you know, if you're going into it just for the money, I can see you potentially burning yourself out pretty quick. So definitely being selfless, not going into it for the money. Being courageous. A lot of times it will feel as if it's just you fighting against everybody. And the people that are coming to you, I think people don't appreciate enough. People just don't go to lawyers just to go to a lawyer. They're going to a lawyer when there's a situation that they're dealing with that they don't know how to deal with and nobody else does. So when you're going as a lawyer, you have to understand that people are coming to you with their problems. Again, we're people. Just like the president is a person, just like the person at Burger King is a person. That might be our job, but we're people. So we have our own things going on. And by being a lawyer, you have chosen to go into a profession where people are going to bring you their problems. So understanding that, I think, is very, very important because this is a profession of service to people in their most dire situations. Because whether it's a personal injury accident, or if it's a criminal matter, or if it's a tax matter, or if it's a family law matter, these are the most important things in people's life. And understanding that responsibility again, reminds you of the privilege that you do have to practice law, because it is a privilege. So I think those are some of the characteristics, but being able to communicate, being mindful of those subconscious ways that you communicate with people. There's a lot of different characteristics, but I think those are some of the high points that would help. Being mindful and aware of those would help somebody along their journey.
During your journey
Yes,
to becoming a lawyer, becoming a husband, an upstanding man of the community, has there ever been a point or points in your life where you just, I'm tired, I can't do this, I do not want to do this anymore? And if so, how did you work your way out of that?
Good question. Two different things came to mind when you asked that. In short, the answer is no.
Okay.
And this is why. I was in the 7th grade. I was at Ollie Middle School in Houston. This is just before I moved back to Beaumont. I ran track because in the off season, that's what they said we were supposed to do, so I did. My younger sister growing up, she ran track. My stepmom, she ran track at the collegiate level. My dad played football at the collegiate level. So I come from a family of athletes, and I never forget, I started running track, and maybe first track meeting, I was like, I'm over this. Basketball, I'm running to score. Football,
Yeah.
I'm running to score. Track, I'm just running. You know what? I'm over this. And I had a conversation with my dad. I said, Dad, you know what? I'm done. I'm gonna quit. And he said, son, you're not gonna quit because you started. And that moment has continued with me throughout my life. If I've started, I can't quit. And that brings me to the second point of what I thought about, because this is a job, a profession where you will be tired more often than not. There's always going to be something to do, especially when you're in trial. And I believe it was last year, Jamal Williams, a football player who was playing for the Detroit Lions at the time, who is now with a different team, I believe New Orleans, if I'm not mistaken. I heard him say something on a TV show. He said, everybody is good before they're tired, but a champion is what you do when you're tired. And I believe that, because even in law school, I used to write on these little index cards. I would write these different messages, and that's something I carried on from my mom. She would do that. She did that for me in college when I left, so I would have them on my desk. So as I'm studying now, I have them in my briefcase, and I actually have one of them on my desk to this day, a note that I wrote, and it simply says, everyone is tired, do more. Because that's what it comes down to. I do believe there might be people that might be more brilliant than me, that might be more creative than me, but they're not gonna outwork me. There's gonna be some times where some people might quit, and that's when I say, you know what, you push harder, because it's in those moments, it's that off season when you see what makes a champion. It's not the game. All the work has been done already. And that's how I've kind of looked at it. So yeah, I haven't really had that moment of, I just want to quit. You do have those moments when you're tired and you want to take a step back. And I do think you should take a step back. I believe through COVID, one thing that has come to light for many people that, you know, we're more comfortable talking about. And this even goes back to what we first started talking about. Our older generation weren't as comfortable talking about the struggles we may have with our mental health at times. And we have to take a step back to take care of ourselves. That's one thing that I preach to a lot of folks, with my staff, with other lawyers. I'm always asking, how are you doing? Not about how's work. Yeah, we talk about, but how are you doing? How are your family doing? Because if you're not okay there, you're not going to be okay here. And I care more about you than whatever we got to do here. We can get this done, but I need you to be okay. So yes, haven't ever thought about stopping, quitting, but sometimes you do need to take a step back.
I'm going to tell a story, then I'll get back to my questions. Kobe Bryant, may he rest in peace, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, in my opinion.
Yes, ma'am.
Was telling a story that he had went to the gym. It was early in the morning. Another basketball player came in, and so Kobe was just practicing on his free throws, shooting. The other player came in, shooting. They were in there for hours and hours. So finally, the other player left, and then Kobe Bryant left right after that. And the player came up to Kobe and said, how are you able to just shoot, and, you know, not get tired. And Kobe Bryant said something similar to what you said. He was like, it's not that I wasn't tired, I was exhausted. It's just I wanted you to see and prove to myself that no one was going to outwork me.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right, because I think that's when you really know what you're made of. It's in those moments of, okay, I'm tired, but now what? You know, that goes back to athletics. There's a reason you run lines until you're exhausted and then run some more.
Yes.
Because you're going to get tired in the fight. You're going to get tired, but it's what you do after that moment.
Yes. Now, I have read numerous times, I'm sure maybe you've read or heard, that being a lawyer is not for the faint of heart. What does that mean?
It's a difficult job. It's a difficult job. Physically, socially, as well as mentally. And what I mean about that physically is very demanding, especially if you're in private practice, because you don't have no one else to help to get things done. If it's not going to get done, it's going to be because you didn't do it. So the hours can be long. So it's very demanding physically. Socially, there may be times where you're not able to be around your family or your friends because you got work. My wife knows when I'm in trial, you know, I'm locked in. I'm not as communicative. I'm locked in. And she appreciates that, because my wife, I met her in law school. She's a lawyer. So she understands that. But mentally, you know, this can be very draining. And like I said, if everybody is coming to you with their problems, who do you go to when you have these problems?
Yes.
You know, when you're seeing the ugliest of the world, what do you do with that? Fortunately, I do, you know, I have a strong faith. I have strong mental fortitude, so that has allowed me to keep pushing past some of those difficult times, and it has allowed me to be strong when others may not be as strong. So I believe that's what they mean by it. But one thing I think that really puts a cap on that is in law school we were told law is a jealous mistress. She wants all of your time.
That's funny.
Yeah, when you're in law school, she wants all of your time. And if you don't give her all of your time, it will show. It will show. And even in the practice of law, she can be a jealous mistress. You still have to develop your skills that you do have. You're still going to be required to do continuing legal education. And that's going to also require you to still be in a community, because what good does it have, and what does it mean if you have all these skills but you have no clients? So it is very demanding of your time. So it's not for the faint of heart for some of those reasons.
Now, you've spoken about your faith being an integral part in your life. Is that one of the reasons that you have managed to stay in law for over 15 years now? Yeah,
that's a very good question. I'd like to say yes. My faith, what I stand on, obviously, like I started, this doesn't come from me. This was somebody that instilled this in me, and it's my grandparents. That's where my strong conviction comes from. Does that mean I'm at church every weekend? No. But I do believe that foundation that was given to me is what I stand on. So in those difficult times, that has sustained me, for sure. I definitely believe that.
You went to historically black colleges.
Yes, ma'am.
For your undergrad, Florida A&M, for your grad, TSU, Thurgood Marshall Law School. Was that something done on purpose by your parents, by you, or by both?
It was intentional. All of those were intentional. Before, again, growing up, thought I was going to be a football player. I thought that's what I enjoyed. I was pretty good at. There got a point where I didn't keep getting as big, so I said, let me try this basketball out. Let's focus there. But during that time when I was playing football, I loved the University of Texas. I just knew that's where I was going. But then my older sister, she went to Wiley College, which is the oldest historically black college west of the Mississippi. And that was my first introduction to that world. And when I first went up there, it just blew my mind. And it wasn't something that was foreign in the sense because, going to Ozan and Central, those are black high schools. Right. So I was used to being around us. But as I kind of pivot for a second, one of the most important things for me throughout my development, especially in high school, wasn't just the folks that I surrounded myself with, but I was fortunate enough to be involved with the NAACP, where we would travel every summer to conventions. And what was happening, we weren't just traveling to conventions, we were competing in what we call AXO, which are different competitions in all various types of art. And so what would happen, all the best and brightest from around the nation, peers, were coming to these cities. And we get to compete against each other. And we get to develop relationships and friendships that are still strong to this day. And that let us know that a young guy such as myself from Beaumont, Texas, can go and compete anywhere and do it well. That was very integral in my development. So when I went to Wiley for the first time and saw at a college level a place where they are really in tune with what I felt I needed and what I didn't even know I needed, I was like, I want that for myself. So even though I applied to a lot of different schools, I had made up in my mind I was going to historically Black university for undergrad. Like I said, Morehouse I kind of carved out because it wasn't fit for me, but I thought I was going to go to Howard. That was going to be my next play. And then FAMU was the best decision I've ever made. I say that any day.
Wow.
It has truly made me who I am in a lot of ways. It's given me a skill set that I wouldn't have been able to get anywhere else. It's given me relationships that I still stand on to this day. And it prepared me to go to a law school that's at a historically Black university and know that I'm going to receive an education that is not less than. It's going to be greater than, because they're giving me something that other universities would not have given me. And through those experiences at a HBCU, that's what has allowed me to step into a place like this, where it's not many of me, to step into profession one where it's not many of me. And then when we start getting to the personal injury side of it, it's even smaller number there. Going to an HBCU let me know that I can compete in any of those spaces and thrive.
Now you spoke about, I hear this so many times, that HBCUs are lesser than PWIs, predominantly white institutions. Can you speak a little bit more specifically on why that is not true? At least I feel that is not true.
Yes, ma'am. And again, I do recognize and I do appreciate that people can only speak from their perspective.
Yes.
Right. You know, if you only see one version of something, you're not going to know there's anything different. So I recognize that some of that comes from just simply not knowing. But what you can receive at an HBCU for a person of color is a confidence in yourself that you can't get everywhere, because you are seen, you are recognized, your experiences are validated and not necessarily dismissed. Now, am I saying you can't get that at a majority university? I'm not. Many of people have gone there. My sisters, they have gone there. Two of my other sisters have gone to a majority institution and have done very well. But there's a feeling when you're going to a family reunion. You know, that feeling you get, or when you're going to a barbecue. It's those type of feelings that you can get at a historically Black university that I argue would be difficult to replicate other places. But yeah, there's the value in the education, there's the value in the experience, and when we look at the history of these institutions, understanding that what brought about some of the greatest developments within our community, it started at HBCUs because, one, we didn't have the option. So it was the nucleus for all the creative, for all the evolution, for all the great that we now stand on. So I'm proud to say that I'm a part of that legacy.
You went to Thurgood Marshall Law School located in Houston, Texas.
Yes, ma'am.
What would you say, and maybe this is a difficult question, but what would you say is one of the most important things that you took away from that school?
Good question. I can say it this way because this is the first thing that came to mind. The importance of the legacy. I come from a legacy of my dad went there. I had a cousin there. My wife has gone there. Now I'm there. There's a legacy, not because we all went to the same law school, but understanding when you're given this privilege of practicing law, you have a responsibility and obligation to protect it, to improve it, and then to pass it on. That is what Thurgood stands on. That's one of our mottos. And I really do appreciate that. That's the reason why in the last year of me teaching at Thurgood, I didn't take a salary, because I wanted to give. It gave me so much, I want to give back to it. So even though I was driving out there once a week while I'm practicing law
From Beaumont?
From Beaumont to lecture for 2 hours, to create a curriculum and everything, I did all of that because of what that university gave to me. It's that legacy of understanding the privilege we have, protecting it, improving it, and passing it on, definitely. And one thing I can say about Thurgood, I left there knowing that I can compete anywhere in anyone's courtroom.
If someone wants to be a lawyer,
Yes, ma'am.
what is that pathway? I'm sure it's different for everyone, but just generally speaking.
Yes, ma'am. So one of the misnomers people might have is that, well, in order to go to law school, I have to have a degree in criminal justice or pre-law. So you don't. It can be in basket weaving. It can be in physical education. You just have to have a 4-year degree. And at that point, you can apply to law school. When I came in, you had to take the LSAT. I believe now you can take the GRE, and depending upon your score, that will assist you in the different schools you can go to. Once you get there, it's going to be a three-year process. Some law schools, once you're in, you're in. Some law schools, such as Thurgood, there's a curve. And if you're below the curve, you can get kicked out. And that can even happen in your second year of law school, which is not like other law schools, so it's very competitive. And the reason being is, and one of the reasons I love Thurgood so much, is that it gives opportunities to folks that might not have had an opportunity anywhere else. And that's why it's a unique school. It has its challenges because it understands that. And, I appreciate it from taking that particular position. And, my dad, when he went to law school, he was in his mid-30s. I graduated law school, I think I was 27, 28. So, you don't have to be someone fresh out of college. This can be a whole second career. But it's just really what fits and works for your life. But I will tell you, it is a commitment. If you're going to go, and if you have a family, that needs to be something discussed, because it is a commitment. When my dad went, like I said, in his 30s, he was working and he was on city council. So what he would do during the week, he would be in Houston for school. On the weekends, he'd come back for city council meeting. He would come back for the meeting and then go back, all the while trying to juggle a course load, city obligations, and simply work as well as family. So I say it is a commitment. And statistics say that a lot of people that are newly married, when somebody starts law school, it can be difficult. A lot of people end up getting divorces. But I think when you have those real conversations with your loved ones, and if everybody is behind you, because you're going to need support, I think you can be successful.
You have spoken about being in courtrooms all across the U.S. Do you have to take a test or something to practice in each state, or you just take the bar and you're good for the U.S.?
Great question. Each state has their own individual bar. Okay. So for example, Texas, the only way you can practice law in the state of Texas or get a bar license, you have to take the test. Some states such as Georgia, you can take the test, or after practicing for a certain period of time, you can waive in. You can do an application. If you're in good standing with your jurisdiction being Texas, then they'll give you a license out there. If you don't go about that route, there's something we call a pro hoc visa, is when you basically, for this particular case, if you have a local counsel, an attorney out there that's licensed in that state, they can submit it on your behalf, and you can work on that case, and you can appear on that case. And that's what we have to do a lot of the times on some of these cases that we have in different states where we may not be licensed.
When you go to court, you have your trial. Do you get nervous? Have you ever gotten nervous?
Well, I like to say yes and no. And what I mean by that, I know a large reason that I'm more comfortable with public speaking and in those settings goes directly back to my lineage of theater. Having that training, and I take some of that again subconsciously with me when I'm moving about in the courtroom and making sure my body's positioned certain ways, and the way in which I use my tone, my voice, my pace.
What is your favorite thing about being a lawyer, and is there anything that you don't like about being a lawyer?
Favorite thing about being a lawyer is being of service. Being of service allows me, one of the greatest feelings is visiting with the client after you have done something that has forever changed their life. And that doesn't always mean getting them a lot of money. Sometimes that just means bringing closure to a situation so that they can move on. That's one of the greatest things. One of the most challenging things is simply the commitment. You got to be committed to this. You can't, this isn't a profession you can be half in, half out. You got to be 10 toes.
Now we're going to talk about some legalese terms
Yes, ma'am.
that you can explain for us. What does the right to a speedy trial mean? Is there like a particular time frame that constitutes speedy trial?
Yes, ma'am. No. Speedy trial has really two different components. One, we are talking about how long it takes for somebody to get ready to go to trial. And then another aspect is where in the hierarchy are we when we're talking about whether my trial goes to trial or not. In Jefferson County, Harris County, some of your largest counties, they will have courts that are specifically criminal, specifically family, specifically juvenile, specifically criminal. In smaller counties such as Liberty County, our Chambers County, for example, Hardin County, these aren't as big, so they don't have as many courtrooms. So that one judge will hear all of these different type of cases. So when we're talking about speedy trial, for example, we're talking about who has hierarchy in a lot of those settings. Or even in our criminal court, for example, the ones that have number one priority on the trial docket is going to be those individuals who have an older case where they're in jail. The next priority are going to be those that have a younger case when they're in jail. Third tier is going to be older case when they're on bond. Last tier is going to be the newer cases on bond. So where you fall in that category will determine how quickly you go. And as long as the state, for the most part, announces that they are ready for trial, it doesn't matter if it takes necessarily, and I say it loosely, doesn't matter if it takes years to get there, as long as they're ready. Because if there's older cases, you know, it kind of got to go the process. And it's with COVID, as you can imagine, that has thrown everything upside down. That has really put a backlog on a system that was already backlogged. But we are working through that, especially in Jefferson County. Judges are doing a very good job with getting cases to trial and getting cases moved. So that's really what it means. It doesn't, when people say, oh, I want a speedy trial, they think that if I don't get it, the case will be dismissed. That's what the law says, but it's very nuanced when we are talking about what it means to have a speedy trial.
Okay. What are Miranda rights?
Good question. When you are being arrested or detained, generally arrested, those are the rights that you have that they're going to read to you. Mm-hmm. That's, you know, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. You have a right to an attorney. If you can't afford one, one will be appointed to you. Those are some of the general principles in which they're letting you know, hey, right now you are being alleged of a crime, and these are the rights that you have. You can choose to waive those, and if you do, that's on you. But if you choose to invoke those, it can't be held against you.
What is pleading the fifth, and what does that mean?
Yes, ma'am. Pleading the fifth stems from the Fifth Amendment. It's one of the components of that particular amendment, as they have different components. The double jeopardy is in there also. But pleading the fifth is basically saying you're asserting your right to not self-incriminate yourself. That's what the law is. It can be, you see it a lot of times in civil, but you can even see it in the criminal court. If someone is asked a question and there's a concern whether or not my response could incriminate me for a criminal offense, that's when it comes into play. The fact that you pled the fifth can't be used against you. But, you know, for the purposes of public opinion, you know, that in most people's mind, they look at it like, oh, that means you did it.
Exactly.
That's how it looks. But the way it's used judicially and in a courtroom, it's not that way.
We are wrapping up.
Yes, ma'am.
And you have been amazing.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's very kind of you.
So we're going to do some quick hitters. So
okay.
First thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
First one, who is your favorite lawyer?
Good question. I'm gonna say it this way. I think it's a conglomerate of different lawyers that I've seen. Okay. You know, obviously my dad being the first lawyer, so that importance of what it means to be a lawyer, that responsibility, that obligation, what it looks like. James Payne being one of my mentors that have taught me so many different things, from the practice of law to some of the different strategies in court, to Norm Silverman, who's one of the greatest criminal defense attorneys in the state of Texas, of how to be detailed. From the extent when I first started practicing with him, he taught me to, when I first started practicing, you couldn't just get a copy of the police report. You would have to go and copy. So I would literally handwrite everything detailed. So that training there, I carry with me to this day. So when I read a police report, I'm looking for commas and periods because those matter. To the extent of Ryan Gertz, who's local criminal defense attorney, who I respect a lot and try cases with, of pushing me to take it to another level, as well as incorporating PowerPoint and visual presentations with my presentation to a jury. So I think when you say who's the lawyer I look up to, it's a conglomerate of different folks, and there's many others that I could mention as well.
Okay. Do you have a favorite saying or quote?
Yes. The legacy you leave is a life that you live.
Okay. What is your favorite thing to do outside of being a lawyer?
Good question. One, I definitely spend a lot of time with family and friends. And I say family and friends, but I really mean family because friends are family. And I garden. I really garden. And I picked it up from my grandmother and my in-laws. And the reason I appreciate gardening, for me, that forces me to slow down. That's my me time. That's my meditation. And I think there's so much power from nurturing something and seeing when you do give it the attention, it can thrive. But when you don't, you see what happens. And seeing those little minute details, that lets me know that God is real. So I wear different lapel pins for different reasons. One of the ones, whenever I wear a flower, is to remind me to appreciate that moment. Because when you're in the garden, you're getting these moments that you should hold on to. It makes you slow down. And it just reminds me of that. And like, for example, I'm wearing a crown today. It's not because I'm saying, oh, I'm a king. No, it reminds me to strive to be the higher version of myself. I think we'll never ever really get there, but I think as long as you continue to strive, that's what we should aspire to.
If you could select your last meal, what would it be?
It's gonna be a steak. My wife would probably say it shouldn't be. It's gonna be a steak. It's gonna be a steak.
Yes. Okay, if you could choose 5 guests, dead or alive, that you can invite to dinner, to your dinner table, who would you invite?
James Baldwin.
Oh, I love
James
him.
Baldwin. Marvin Gaye. I'm torn between Basquiat and Gordon Parks. I want to say Gordon Parks because of his lineage to being present during the civil rights movement. I would love to be able to hear his perspective on that as well as art. I like Basquiat because I would love to hear his thoughts during the era in which he came. My wife and I, we were very into art, we collect. And the last 2 individuals would be my grandmothers, my mom's mom and my dad's mom. My dad's mom passed when I was very young, really have no memories. So I would love to have that experience with her. My grandmother, still alive today, is one of the most amazing people I've ever met, and I would love to share that experience with her. So yeah, it would be James Baldwin, Gordon Parks, Marvin Gaye, and my grandmothers.
Okay. Now, my very last question is, who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast, but you have to help me get them on?
Good question. Sheree Reed, our city attorney, friend from growing up. We were in law school together. She came in after I was there. Her as well as Brittany Holmes, who is also one of our local judges. She and the 2 of them and myself, we made a conscious decision to move back to Beaumont. Could have went somewhere else, and actually, to be candid, my plan was to go to Harris County, to go to the DA's office, but they had a hiring freeze at the time, and I realized God knows where you need to be half the time, all the time. So we've chosen to make this home, and I've been just so proud of watching her growth through that office, and to be in the position that she's in today. She's worked very hard. She's brilliant, and she's strong, and she's courageous. Okay. I think she'll be an excellent guest.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I understand that time is a commodity that you can never get back. So I appreciate your time.
Well, this was valuable and well spent, and I'm glad I've been able to spend this time with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you so much for watching. You can catch this podcast and all my others on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.
Sit back, buckle up, enjoy the ride with Crystal Petry Consult.